Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about Java Spring Boot and if you need a degree. So let's get into it. So the question in question was a little bit of a story and it went, "Hi Frederick, I just have a question that is a concern of mine. I have started learning Spring Boot since last year, and that's my framework of choice. I've been scouting for an entry-level job, but most want a degree as a minimum requirement. Do you think I picked the wrong framework because since I don't have a degree? And on top of that, I remember selecting Spring Boot so that I could do enterprise level application development, but without a degree, is it possible to me to get a job doing this?" So the short answer is it's going to be tougher than if you have a degree, but it's not impossible. Let me explain that a little bit. So this is interesting because I think that this subscriber touches on a nuance that I usually avoid a little bit when I talk about degrees and I talk about what's going to be a good position for you to be in when you're looking for your first job. So what I usually say, and this is going to be a repeat of a lot of stuff that I've said before, is that it is not impossible to go as a self-taught developer and get a job working as at a company. There are many companies out there who are willing to consider you as a candidate if you have the skills to back the whole thing up. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of prejudice in the industry, and there's a lot of companies as well who will just dismiss you. They won't even call you back if you don't have a degree. You will notice that quite a lot of the high-end companies list, as this subscriber is mentioning, that you need a minimum amount of either years of experience or a degree, and in some cases both. I've seen in many cases at say the FANG companies where they state that, oh, you need a some computer science degree and at least 4 years of experience. That's like the minimum requirement. They're not looking for anything below that. Now, that's not always just a hard thing, but in many cases it is. So you should be aware of that this is the situation, but you should also be aware of that it's not the case for every company. However, what's interesting about this, I think, is that this subscriber is talking specifically about Spring Boot, Java, and enterprise level development. Now, based on the stack and like the fact that this person wants to work in an enterprise or a big corporation, I will tell you from just personal experience that is likely to be a little bit trickier in some cases. The reason is because most of the companies who are a little bit more conservative regarding hiring policies and stuff like that, in many cases are bigger companies. This is not always true. I promise you it's not always like a universal truth, but it can be a little bit tougher because of what I'm saying. They're usually a little bit more conservative. And Java is one of the enterprise languages. That doesn't mean that it's impossible. I'm just saying that it can be tougher. However, on the flip side, if you look into work that is related to smaller scale application development, such as if you were to work for an agency or a consultancy or something like that, well, then in many cases that might be an easier in for you because the smaller companies can't really, in terms of salary, compete with the bigger companies, and in many cases they are actually filled up with people who may be a little bit more flexible and might actually, I'm not saying know more about software development because that's not really right, but they have opened their eyes to the fact that a lot of the work that software developers do don't actually require a degree. You just need the skills. It does, like the degree is just a piece of paper. I have so far never met someone with a college degree that I didn't have to train, and for in some cases I've had to, and it still is. In some situations, you have a self-taught developer who kind of just gets it and gets productive really quickly, and you have a college kid who takes like forever to like get to a point where they get productive, and vice versa. So it's there's no clear benefit to one over the other when it comes to hiring people, apart from the fact that of course they've had more training than you have to provide. But with that said, there are languages that are more associated, and that's the nuance that I usually don't talk so much about because it's not always true. You have to take it for what it is. Usually, if you go with languages that are more associated with freelance work, smaller agencies and projects of like mid-size at most, you might have a better shot at getting into a company. An example would be PHP is a very popular language in many areas of software development. It's not at the enterprise level as common to have PHP as a stack in part of your stack. There are exceptions, of course, but for agencies and mid-sized companies, this is a very popular language. Ruby is also one of those languages, and so is JavaScript with Node and so forth. So if you're really struggling to find a Java position which doesn't require a degree, you can still try it out, see if something changes about your situation, but you can also try looking at job postings for slightly smaller companies, which and a lot of them may be using one of these other languages that has, let's call it, a culture that is less academic. It's a little bit looser than that, and that might help you get into the industry. So what I want you to take away from this is that no, it's not impossible for you to get a job as a software developer without a degree. You should know that it's going to be tougher than if you have a degree, because there's still quite a lot of prejudice within the industry against people who are self-taught. That's not always warranted, and I know for a fact that just because you have a degree, that doesn't mean that you are a good software developer. You still require, in many cases, the same amount of training as somebody who's self-taught. It's just different people with different backgrounds, and you have to bridge different things with them in their knowledge when they start working. If it is really tough for you, because sometimes it can be tougher for you to get a job within a corporate environment if you are self-taught, because they might be even more inclined to see that you have a degree of some sort, you can have a look at mid-sized to smaller companies that do web work in other languages that usually have a culture that is a little bit looser than the stricter Java and C# enterprisey languages. This is not always true, but it's worth looking into. Have a great day.